Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Wenz World, where variety reigns. And so, in today's day and time, things can get a little stressful. I mean, work, life, family, balancing it all. Students out there trying to balance their collegiate academic career with their collegiate sports career and everybody else in between. It is my pleasure to bring to you the one, the only, the Brian Wall. You might as well be a wrestler with that kind of intro.
That's awesome, man. I need to carry, you need to just follow me around everywhere I go and before I enter any room at work or anywhere. Before you enter in,
I'm
you
your
need to
hype man, baby. I'll be your hype man.
that's awesome. We should all have a hype man. That's what mental health should be about, like, everybody's got a counselor. We should, we got mentors and recovery coaches and all this. We should have hype men. That's what we need.
Absolutely. But we'll be a little more inclusive. They can be hype people.
Oh, of course, absolutely. All inclusive. I love it. I love
Here
it.
in Wen's World, variety reigns, inclusivity reigns. And that's why we bring all of these different guests on. Folks, last time we had the one and only Rushion McDonald on, who obviously helped launch the career of Steve Harvey, is currently Stephen A. Smith's business manager. And so we go from everything from the NFL with Radio Griff to wrestling with the one and only Vinny Bucci to the aforementioned Rushion McDonald. And now we have the man who's going to help put it all together mentally and everything in between, the one and only Brian Wall, certified advanced alcohol and drug counselor, licensed mental health counselor, and licensed professional counselor. Dude, you've been doing this for over 2 decades. I want to back it up a little bit and talk about the decades before the decades. What led you into this career path?
Wow, man, that yeah, my first thought was I don't know if I can remember, right? Because I'm in recovery and I put so much in my body. Sometimes I tell folks that, I go over some of the things I've been through and what I've done. And I always say, the things that I've forgotten, it's probably a symptom of all that I put in my body. But yeah, so when I started off going into college, I was pre-med, wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon, and real quickly realized that I just wasn't as committed as it was going to take, honestly. And a lot of I was a Division I collegiate scholarship athlete, swimming, and all the travel and all the regimen that we had for practicing, et cetera, on top of schooling, it was just too much, and I just knew I wasn't going to be able to swing it. So I ended up going. Gosh, what did I do? Psychology. I think I majored in psychology for a minute, and then after 3 years of intense use cocaine, I ended up losing my scholarship, got kicked off the team, and went back to my hometown in North Carolina and tried to piece it together with literally. I look back now and realize it was the worst plan I could have possibly come up with, which was use more, right? So that didn't work out, and I ended up, my story unfolds from there, and it takes me into suicidality, et cetera, and into treatment. And I got out of treatment and ran into my previous wife, who passed away in 2013 of cancer. But at that time, I wanted to put my life back together, and she was giving me all that I needed to do that, support, et cetera. And so then I went back to finish my undergraduate in business administration, and from there just a newfound love for learning. I was ready. I was just in a place in my life where I was ready to learn, ready to invest. So I did that and went straight from my undergraduate into my master's degree in counseling psychology, and really felt like that was something that it was a God thing. I really felt like that was where God was leading me. And I always meet folks and they're like, gosh, I feel like you've known me forever, Brian. I feel like I could tell you everything, these sort of things. And so I listened to that and followed that trail and fell in love with the curriculum and all that was learned and all that I studied, and got out of the field and had a couple detours, honestly, because I was frustrated genuinely with the fact that I was going to be helping people and not making a whole lot of money. That was frustrating for me. So took a couple detours, and God brought me right back around. Honestly, he keeps bringing me back to this field, and so I'm here to stay this time around. I've been in it for 20 years, and gosh, this last stint's probably been a majority of that 20 years. So I'm seeing the value helping others, and I sleep really well at night, and got a very well put together family. I feel like we've gotten in, and we're in our sweet spot right now. And with all the ages and everything that's going on, and I think probably being in the field has been a compliment to that. So
Man, that's amazing, dude. It's so good to kind of put the LinkedIn profile with the person behind it.
yeah,
You know, we all have hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of connections, depending on how long we've been in LinkedIn and how engaged we are.
yeah,
It's always really cool to get to know the people that we engage with, and you're one of those people. And you've also just been described as others as having a gift for recognizing growth opportunities and also motivating others beyond their potential. And when I saw that, it made me think. It made me realize that potential is just perceived initially. Because if you're motivating people beyond what they thought they were capable of,
right.
it's evidence that they're capable of much more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, that was something that I picked up in swimming. I mean, I swam my whole life from like seven, competitively, from seven all the way through college until I was about in my early 20s. And I honestly, at one point was pretty close to Olympic trial cuts in a couple events. And I feel like I probably could have accomplished that if I had not been using so heavily and so focused on the things that were not giving me a return on my investment, if I can say that. A lot of lessons learned, but in the pool, man, I swear to you, I look back now, I've done some things in the pool that I'm not, I never knew it was possible. And I look back now, even at 46, just turned 46 last month, and I'm baffled at some of the things I did. I really am. And it just taught me how possible it is to push your body, and where your mind goes, your body will follow it. It has no choice. It will do what you tell it to do. It may take some training, some planning, some practice, some regimented muscle memory, that sort of thing, processes and everything, it seems. But man, it's amazing. And so I try to take all that I've learned and pay it forward to those folks that I lead on whatever level that is. And I just know that there's so many of us, including myself on a majority of days, are probably living average to above average. And I deserve more, you deserve more, the world deserves more of us. And it blows my mind to think, if we can get people on those levels, how much different would the world be? It just is baffling to me.
No, that is insane to even think about, man.
It is, isn't it?
It really is, because they say what we use just a small fraction of our brain's power. You
Yeah,
know, imagine if we used a larger fraction of our ability to empathize with people that are going through some difficult times,
yeah.
which makes me really, investigate the idea of mental health and addiction. And since you're a certified advanced alcohol and drug counselor, what better person to come to these questions to with than you, Brian?
Here we go.
And of course, we're going to post all of the ways that you can connect and contact Brian on the description side of this content. So don't worry there. But Brian, I want to talk to you about kind of, merging the notion and idea of mental health with
Yeah,
reality, because just recently, at least from my experiences, it's been something that you can talk about openly without being laughed out of the room or being called weak or something like that. Even in the professional community that we find ourselves in, it's becoming a topic of discussion, and
yeah.
it's due that at this point. How do you explain to people that come to you, they feel these ways, but they're not sure how to put legs on those feelings and how to work those things out?
Yeah, so it really depends on the setting and the individual and what's being discussed. There's so many specifics to it, but I think generally in this way, the pandemic is one of the best things that could ever happen to us as a culture. It really has pushed us in a corner. Addiction and mental health issues are on the rise, and they are spotlighted right now because we're all at home, and our support networks have largely fallen apart for a lot of us because of all that is the pandemic. And so it's really highlighting a lot of those areas that we need to focus on. So in that way, our culture, I think, is doing a decent job of chasing that a bit and bringing awareness and creating resources and virtual aspects of treatment as well, telehealth type stuff. We've done a pretty good job initially. I think a lot of work to do, but initially, I think we've done a pretty good job of meeting folks where they're at. Lots to do, don't get me wrong, but it's better to have what we have now than no response at all. So I try to play on that positive. I'm really big about finding your tribe. you know, that's huge to me. And it's been a real eye opener to me of what I need in my life and who's going to provide it and how to access that. And so when you gravitate toward your tribe and you're sensitive to relationships and whether or not they're meeting your needs, and you filter out those that don't and you stick with your tribe, you tend to get your needs met, right? So I don't spend a whole lot of time on side trails. It's just not me. I did it for a long time. And so I find my tribe and I stick to it. And that tends to help with expressing whatever my need is and getting the help I need. So I pay that forward to other folks as well.
No, that's super cool and super comforting, especially for people that may be thinking about getting a little help here. Because let's be honest, man, we all need a shoulder and we all need to be a shoulder at times.
Absolutely.
Um, and, having that empathetic spirit and merging that with responsibility is very powerful.
Yeah.
How do you navigate your clients who may be struggling with a substance issue on kind of like owning that issue,
Hmm.
but also kind of working in your own empathy toward them as a fellow human being that's flawed?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a delicate process, man. It really is. It depends on the individual again and the situation and what's going on in detail. But generally speaking, with folks, I think it's a process. I think the way addiction works and the disease in the brain and how it manipulates the way we think and we behave and the way we're convinced that those are the best things for us in the moment. That takes time to whittle away at. But largely with what I do is, finding what direction the individual wants to go, finding the goals that they have in mind, and letting them strive for those goals. Inevitably, the addiction, if they're in active addiction, it's going to hinder that process. So during that time, they're seeing me every week. Those are times that I'm sure to highlight. Wow, wait a minute. You said this was your goal, but this week, this is kind of how things unfolded. I'm wondering how those match up. Help me understand that. And they begin to see that that's not the right track to take, and they understand and realize that they need to make some changes as it relates to their use, hopefully abstinence, and that will lead to them achieving more of the goals that they set for themselves.
And like you said, your mileage may vary and everybody's an individual, different stories,
Yeah.
backgrounds, etc. But generally speaking, how long in your experience does it take for you to see a real change in terms of your clientele's ability to kick a habit?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and it's one of those that's difficult to answer because again, we're dealing with humans, right? But in my own recovery, there's something called post-acute withdrawal symptoms, PAWS, and you can experience those up to a year after use. And so I really, from my own experience, I felt like when I got to the year mark, it was almost like a click, man. I just had there was less struggle from that point forward. There was less triggers. There was less relapse in the way I'm thinking, because sometimes that first year, I was relapsing a lot with just my thought life and getting back to the old behaviors, whether I acted on them or not, which I didn't. But that was even after a year. I started seeing that subside a bit more, and it was a lot easier. For the first couple of months, it was hard for me to walk down the alcohol aisle at the grocery store, and I drive by certain spots that I used to buy whatever I was using at the time, and now that's no problem at all. But I really saw for me a big change, a noticeable change for me after that year mark, and so it really drove home the reality of Paul's and the effects that has in the recovery process.
So we're talking about the recovery process with Brian K. Wall. Again, we'll post all the ways to find him online in the description here. But we're talking about the recovery process. But you talked about the things that led to using, right? Um, you know, as a collegiate athlete, especially a D1 swimmer, there's a lot of pressure, anxiety. People are looking to you to succeed. It's not easy. How do you navigate your clients, especially the young ones, on kind of avoiding that rocky road that leads to regret?
Yeah. Good question. So there's so much in that question, right? There always is in my brain because I'm a counselor and I kind of pick everything apart analytically. And so for me, I think back of where I was when I was swimming and under scholarship and doing really well at a point. Like I said, pretty close to Olympic trial cuts and some events. And so I was on an uprise while also trying to manage my use in a way that it wasn't noticeable in the pool. And that got to the point, obviously, where it was difficult to manage, and hence my losing the scholarship and heading back home. But I think a lot of it has to do with, for me at least, it was. I look back and realize it was really imposter syndrome based. I had gotten to that point of performance and scholarship level, and expectation from the coach and others on my team, and was seen as a certain role model, if you will, or on some level to some folks. And I knew who I was behind closed doors. I knew I was not this guy. And so struggling every day to meet that standard, and knowing that I really doubted that I ever could at all. And as I pick all that apart, unpack it all now, years down the line, I realized that what was hindering me from getting that done, from meeting those standards that I was perfectly capable of meeting, was the addiction, the active addiction that I was living on a daily basis. So that was clouding and distorting a lot of my own self-image and my translation of what was going on around me and what all that meant and how it all fit together. And so eventually that tear, it's like a rubber band, eventually it's going to pop. And that's exactly what happened for me. So with folks that struggle in this area, the anxiety-based stuff, performance-based stuff, imposter syndrome, I really try to break down to the core, what is that doubt about, and where does that doubt come from? And
Hmm.
what do we do with it? Because it's hindering you and it ain't going to go away. We're going to have to hit it head on. So let's tackle it. Let's see what this is about. And we just kind of, we unpack it, and it takes time, but eventually you get to the core of who an individual is, what makes them tick, what are their true goals, what are their true solid God-given gifted strengths that absolutely are there and cannot be taken. And you build on those.
Man, I love your references to God. I'm a believer. We all have different beliefs. Did you find yourself kind of struggling as a believer at the time while you were using, kind of merging our notions about the church and religion and faith and God and all that, but kind of knowing in the background that maybe I'm not doing the right thing? Did shame play at all a part in that story?
It was my best friend, horribly so, man. I can remember, I've always thought the church is screwed up, and it is. But when you got an organization that invites anybody, especially the ones that are most screwed up in the world, it's going to be a screwed up organization, right? So you're
Right.
inviting the worst of the worst to come in and repair and heal. So you're going to get that. And now I understand that, and I value it, and I think there's benefit in it. But at the time of active addiction, actively using, I can't tell you how often I would be doing a line on a mirror and literally staring at myself and having conversations in my head about, what are you doing, man? Why are you doing another one? Do you know what time it is? Do you know what you have to do tomorrow? Do you know who's going to be there? What is the deal here? This is leading nowhere. Just a lot of this self-talk that was really encouraging me, but at the same time encouraging me to do what's right, but also very self-defeating in the way that voice was coming across, because I really hadn't at that time developed that positive self-talk voice. Now I have that. Back then it was just kind of the Brian that was left from the soul deplenishing addiction that I was living. And I think probably, I accepted the Lord when I was 13, and he's always been present spiritually. I've always felt a heightened sense of presence from him, and that's been a steady ongoing presence in my life no matter what was going on. That didn't change it at all when I was in active addiction, and either it was something that was always there and always kind of poking at me, prodding at me to do something different, to make a different choice, go to the left, don't go to the right again. And I just chose not to listen for a long, long time, and I'm beyond grateful, honestly, that I lived through some of the experiences I had, because I look back and not sure how that happened, but I know now God had a plan. And so doing my best to, I don't want to say make it up to him, because he forgives me and I'm moving on, but I'm going to finish strong. Moses didn't find his way till he was 40. I'm not a theologian, but it was late in his life, right? And so I kind of see myself sort of like that, like God is really kind of sprouting me a couple years ago, 43, so 42, really started pulling out of that area of my life, that realm of my life, and deciding that I was going to live different.
Man, that's amazing stuff. We're with Brian K. Wall, a certified everything, advanced alcohol and drug counselor, dude's licensed in mental health counseling, licensed professional counselor, over 2 decades of experience. You do some, nowadays with the virtual stuff, man. So you can help people right from where they are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't do a whole lot of private practice one-on-one stuff right now, but I am open to do that. Heading down to Florida here pretty soon, just accepted a position as clinical director for Lucida Treatment Center in Lantana, and that's under the umbrella of Promises Behavioral Health. Amazing people, above and beyond, more than I could ever ask for, to walk into a position with a team that literally speaks my language. It's like we've known each other. And so super excited to do that. And I know probably virtually helping people one-on-one is going to be a part of that path when we land in Florida. And I'm certainly open to it.
Oh, there's no better news to a family than we're moving to somewhere warm and Disney World is not too far away. I mean, am I wrong here? It's
Especially from Michigan, man, for sure.
ooh, that's a 180.
It
You know,
is.
you're talking family and it hits deep, right? I have two boys of my own and I think about, the choices I made in high school, college, and so on and so on. We always look back and think, could I have done that differently? Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And nobody's an exception to that rule. But you do have two daughters, right? So how do you, when you think about them growing up, when they hit those impressionable years, where there will be choices and they will have
Yeah.
friends and those friends will have friends, I don't know if you had brothers or sisters growing up, but how do you leverage your life experience and, looking at the choices you've made and you've learned a lot and applied that knowledge to your life, which is wisdom. How do you navigate that and kind of pour that into them as they grow into that age?
Yeah, good question, man. That's my legacy. Honestly, that is like pure core soul level passion. Like that is this part of me that I do not play. I am very serious about it. It's the legacy I absolutely intend on leaving with my girls is I will not under any circumstances avoid real conversations. It's not going to happen, not on my watch. And I think that is where change happens when you create a safe space to talk about things that are uncomfortable and weird and awkward and whatever, like I just want my girls to have a safe place around me to talk about whatever they want, whenever they want, for whatever reason. And we just kind of unpack it and we sort it through, we untangle those knots and we make sense of them the best we can. And then also not holding back from them my past, my experiences in addiction. I speak very openly about those, and I use as an opportunity to educate them on what that is and the effects it can have on an individual. Because, and I always tell my oldest, we were just talking about this the other day, and I was like, I share this stuff with you, dear, because when you are at a crossroads and you're presented with the opportunity to potentially take that first drink or that 10th drink or that first line or whatever, and trust me, it's going to happen. I'm sure on some level that monster is going to enter the room. And so when it does, I don't want you to be a stranger of the power that it holds. I want you're going to make whatever decision you make. But the next morning when you wake up and you feel XYZ, I don't want you ever to be wondering, well, what in the world happened? I want you to know I saw this coming. I should have listened to Dad. Okay, we got to regroup and we got to figure out where we're going to go from here, because if we don't, this guy's going to get a handle on my throat and I don't want him there.
You talk about being candid with your girls, and that's
Yeah,
amazing. Two dads talking here, right?
right.
Do you ever worry that candor is going to backfire and one day when they get older, the words, well, you did it, are going to come out of their mouth?
No, I don't, because I'm a counselor and I know that that's a defense mechanism to ask a question like that or make a statement like that. So I turn it right back around on them. And it's happened before, and I'm the first to go, wow, that's a button for you. Because you just came back with this, and I know what you're doing right now. So I've hit a button. You're insecure right now about this conversation. You don't want to have it. So you're deflecting so that you can get around it. That's not going to work. But we can have the conversation later if you want, if this is not a good time. Either way, we're going to have it.
That's real, man.
It's my counseling power. So this is something with my oldest. I talk to her often about. She we're people, she's learning about herself, but she does these projection and deflection and all these defense mechanisms, and so I'm always make a point to call them out with her, but not in a way that is belittling or in a bad way. I try my best to point it out to her. What you're doing right now is called projection. And the reason someone does that is because XYZ. And it's not effective communication. It's not something that's going to help you get to the solution that you're after. So do you want to rephrase that, or do you want me to just run with it? And that usually opens up a whole nother conversation that's usually super helpful, and it humbles them a bit and gets her to drop her defenses because she knows I'm going to call them out.
That's awesome stuff, man. I love your candor and your vulnerability. And it's really incredible. You know, we were talking about God and, you know, the Bible and all that stuff and the people in the Bible. I always tell, I have, you know, friends from all walks of life, from
Yeah.
agnostics to atheists to everything in between and way outside those realms. And the thing that always kind of draws a deep conversation is, if I were trying to prop up propaganda, I would never put anything negative about my propaganda. It would always be these people are the best people ever. They were perfect. They never made a mistake. This doctrine is easily understood at all times of day and night. Any questions? No? Okay, moving on. As you were starting to use and as it grew into an addiction, what were some of the lies that you initially didn't believe that you talked yourself into believing?
I remember, I'm gonna process this out loud with you. So
Cool.
I remember when I was 15, I was looking at a couple scholarships from a couple different schools, and you know, I had my 1, 2, and 3 choices, and really focused on getting that money, you know, to swim. That was kind of the goal, and it was a goal about to be accomplished. And I remember believing that I would never use, and I remember believing that I had control. Going into college, I realized and I believed that drugs were not good. Just say no, right? Not going to get you where you want to go. As I began to progress in my own journey of addiction, I literally got to a point before, you know, I was kind of heading up that mountain before I took the big drop. But as I was heading up the mountain, I remember being convinced at one point that they were a very solid support for me to meet standards in a number of areas of my life. And without them, likely those standards would not be met. So I needed to continue to use on some level in order to maintain. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it definitely helps because I know people, and I think everybody with something at some point in their life,
Hmm.
they've used that as a crutch
Yeah.
or a solution for a deep-seated issue.
Yep.
So it does answer the question. It's an amazing insight that you have. I love that you pulled out some Robert Louis Stevenson, because this quote that we're about to drop right here in Wenz
That's
World
a good one.
is amazing because it just resonates with anybody on this journey that we call life.
Yeah.
Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you plant. How appropriate for any recovery journey, right? Because
Yeah.
everybody wants the coin, the 1 year coin. Everybody wants the certificate. They want to say, man, it's been 10 years, but in actuality, it's been a day and I'm ready to pull all my hair out. Yeah. How do you merge society's expectations of getting it together and pull it together and it's all in your head and all that with the reality of a 24-hour a day clock and a 365-day calendar?
Yeah, good question. So, you know, for me, as it relates to that quote, we talk a lot about investment, usually financially based. So we invest in the market, and we do that on a daily basis because every day the Dow Jones bell rings, something's going to happen, and we'll know at the end of the day, right? How our money was affected. Do we want to pull it out? We want to put more in? What do we want to do? We assess accordingly along the way, but it's all within that 24-hour period, right? So we do that for our own futures. It just makes good sense to do that in our own lives. And so if I am investing in today, tomorrow, the word talks about this too. Don't worry about tomorrow, it'll take care of itself. So if I'm investing in today, then tomorrow will take care of itself. If I'm making good, solid decisions today, it's going to create my tomorrow's reality. So I've heard before, I forget who the quote's from, but you know, worry is as effective as trying to solve a math equation by chewing gum. That just, you know, it makes sense to me. It's like you're operating if you're investing in, the move down to Florida, okay, so I can invest and I can plan accordingly off of what I know today. Either way, if you're investing and you're trying to make a decision off of what's going to happen 5 years ago, you're still doing that only off the information you have available to you today. So with that being the case, everything keeps coming back to today, right? So that leads me to believe today's pretty important, right? Tomorrow's not guaranteed. This could be the last time I ever share with anyone publicly. But it's like the whole point is, man, I'm like loving on you the best I can right now. I'm trying to be present. I'm trying to pay forward and share what I can from my heart, from my experiences, wisdom gain, that kind of thing. And if that's not what it's about, I'm not sure I want to be here, honestly. And that's the
Mm,
stuff that gets me up in the morning. I've been thinking about us meeting for several days now. And I like doing things like this. It's fun for me. I
thank you.
love loving on people. And that's not a script. It really does light me up. So if I do that today, then tomorrow I'm going to wake up ready to roll and do it again.
Mm. That's big, man. Just keep it moving. We hear it
Yeah.
all the time, but progress, man, even if it's that one day at a time mentality, but really believing that and living and being intentional and present in that moment.
Yeah.
And even owning the suck, as they say, like,
Yeah.
you know what? Today may have sucked. And I'm okay with saying that out loud because society tells us, buck up, put your chin up there. It's no
Yeah.
such thing as a bad day on this side of, if you woke up, it's a good day. Like, can we be honest? Sometimes being a parent is hard. Sometimes being a husband is hard. Sometimes being,
Absolutely.
so I think it's like we've almost been conditioned into our own isolation chambers in a way, because it's like you're put in a box and told you're just negative if you're not always positive.
Right.
And I don't know that I've ever met anybody that's been sincere, that's 100% always on their game or always upbeat
Right.
or always smiling, unless they're using. And
Right.
so it's like,
Right.
okay, is that person being real with themselves? Are they being real with me? Et cetera, et cetera. It's a rabbit hole. But I also want to we talked about some of the lies that, we believe after we start these behaviors and feed these behaviors, because what we feed grows.
Hmm.
And it's interesting to me, as I'm an avid sports watcher. I love pro football, pro basketball. And as I watch the commercials and, just the advertising, alcohol is looked at in our society as just like it's just part of our society. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a literal agency about alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Like,
Yeah.
it's just part of who we are as a nation.
Right.
And, as an addiction specialist, Brian, I'm sure you've seen a lot of people come in. It always starts like fun and cool and like, yeah, we went out for drinks, and then we find ourselves drinking alone. And then we find ourselves drinking at times that we're like, we wouldn't have had a drink at this time last year. What has changed? And now that we're in the face of a pandemic and our situations have changed and our atmospheres and environments have changed, it's
Hmm.
it's lended to the ability to do more things without people knowing about them, right?
Right.
What do you tell your clients and people that come to you for advice about acknowledging that and facing that head on?
Yeah. You're right. The all that is our society has the struggles have been magnified in the pandemic because of that isolation and because a lot of folks didn't plan well to create the support system that was going to get it done in the tough times. Right? We don't spend a lot of time on doing things like that. A lot of what we do every day is all about us. And that, again, back to that quote, is the reason I put that on my LinkedIn profile. Is just a reminder to me to stay out of myself, get out of my own head and make life about others. And I truly believe the larger my support network, trouble comes, I won't need to even make a phone call. They'll know and they'll come to my doorstep and make sure I'm taken good care of. And so that's a real focus of mine. With just using in general, drinking and the pandemic and the isolation and all that is, as far as facing that reality, I think that again, the pandemic's been really good in magnifying what our needs are as a society. It's magnifying the shortcomings and the mental health and the addiction and all these things are ramping up right now. And so it's really creating an urgency to address those things. And, it used to be that you would go to work and you work all day, and then you go home and you drink yourself to sleep, and you wake up the next day and do it again. Now it's drink yourself all day, drink yourself to sleep, wake up, drink all day, drink, and so now it's like, whoa, we got a real problem on our hands.
Yeah. I
And
laugh, but I laugh because it's true.
it is true.
You know?
It is true. And I think there's genuinely a large percentage of our society that are just not well educated on the damage possibility of using certain drugs and alcohol, and not educated on the consequences, brain health related, physical, etc. And so continuing to bring awareness to all that is going to educate our society more. And so during this pandemic, a lot of things are falling apart, but right now my field is really amping up in that area. We're really amping up efforts to bring awareness and to educate folks on these different aspects of life, and how they can be destructive and dysfunctional, and not a complement to living daily life. And so it's actually refreshing. There's parts of it for me that I'm like, well, finally people are listening, and I'm loving that I get to be a part of that and just share some of that knowledge, and hope that it's helpful.
This is getting to know the people behind the LinkedIn profile, behind the social media, and I don't know if you've seen The Social Dilemma on Netflix at all. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh man, it's such a great documentary on the impact of social media on our culture. And
I'm going to watch it tonight.
oh man, it's something that you want to watch. And I would almost say, my boys are too young to be on the socials, but you have two girls, and it talks about, the impact it has on our brain, and the rush and adrenaline. And it's so similar to a drug addiction, and the algorithm behind it knows that. The people that do the programming know that. And this documentary covers it so well. And it really revealed to me that, I think, right or wrong, social media and the abuse of it, and the way that we use it, and the way that we avoid other things that matter in our lives, consciously or not, this might be the new drug. This might be something that, years from now we look back and we say, yeah, Diet Coke did lead to cancer, and social media really did cause these feelings of isolation, sadness, not feeling like you're enough, and just kind of comparing yourself to all these, fake stories anyway. So, have you seen any of this yet in your practice? Are you seeing this flower, blossom in front of you?
Huge. It's a garden blooming right now. And it's the same area of the brain is triggered when you do social media stuff. And like you said, they've got algorithms and the marketing, and the whole approach is geared around triggering the release of these chemicals that bring us back to do it again, right? And so the same area of the brain, it lights up on SPECT scans and during times of doing things on social media. And there's a lot of studies out there already that show that how much it increases depressive symptoms by basing your life on this activity, and what you view, and how it distorts your own image and reality of what exactly is achievable and not achievable. And I even saw a article the other day about Facebook, and how I forget the percentage, so I'll use 85% like everyone does, but it was a high percentage of the things that are posted on Facebook are not factual, and there's no backing to them. Literally down from everything everyone says that they post, news related stuff. I mean, you name it, 85% plus of things that are posted on Facebook are not even factual. So it makes you wonder about other social media platforms,
Oh, 100%. And, Twitter can be so bad, can be a cesspool of just negativity. And the saddest part is these are actual people. We look at, celebrities or well-known people as, they're celebrities, they can handle, but they're also individuals. They have feelings, and, so are the rest of us having kids, when they get into those years of cyberbullying and navigating that, and also making them aware that it's not cool to be the person that's slinging mud on the socials and stuff like that. You've seen a good bit of that in your practice, I assume, as well.
Oh, for sure, man. One of the big things I push is, you know what, we're not going to get rid of technology. It's only going to continue to grow.
Sure.
As long as Elon Musk is alive, the guy's a brainiac, you know. He's coming up with all kinds of really great ideas, some of them, but they have consequences, right? So good, bad, and ugly. And so I always try to push on my clients that, you know, you're not going to get rid of social media, you're not going to get rid of technology. So find a way to balance it out. And that's one reason why I like LinkedIn. It's a great platform, very encouraging, supportive platform. I'm largely on LinkedIn most of the time, but even my Instagram account, if you look at it and you scroll through my feed, I use as an opportunity to follow a lot of uplifting, positive meditation, mental health based pages. So it's a great way to balance things out. You know, I've got friends and other junk that I follow, but it's balanced out with some good solid posts from positive resources. So I always try to push that on them. Like, don't follow a bunch of crap. Try to balance it out with some good stuff too, to keep balance with yourself.
Man, that's amazing insight. Brian K. Wall, it's been an absolute pleasure. Again, we'll post all the ways that people can reach you online and on the socials and whatnot. Dude, we got to have you back where variety reigns right here in Wenz World. Thank you so much for sharing your day with us, man. It really means a lot.
You bet, brother. I appreciate the opportunity. You take good care.
You too.